Thank you very much. And you don't have to wait until next year, luckily, to hear about AI, because that's exactly what we're about to discuss right now. The question is simple, the answers might not be. How is generative AI transforming content creation?
Freedom means free expression. Freedom also means access to free media and reliable information. Freedom is democracy, the chance to shape your own life and future.
Not be afraid of anything.
Free media, free expression, free societies. This is what DW Akademie is working for together with its partners in over 70 countries worldwide. Around 85% of the world's population, almost 7 billion people, are currently experiencing a decline in media freedom in their countries. Where liberal democracies and autocrats clash, media professionals get caught between the front lines, at a time when they are needed most.
In Ukraine, journalism is a means of survival. Our news are about air raids and air alarms. Our news are about humanitarian corridors. Our news are about where do you get food, where do you get medicine, how do you get out of a town which is under siege.
Algorithms are amplifying anger, hatred, and insecurity. And lies travel much faster than facts on social media. While independent media fight for their economic survival, autocrats reach ever larger audiences with seemingly unlimited resources.
This is not a freedom of speech issue, it's a freedom of reach issue.
With funding from the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, the German Federal Foreign Office and the European Union, DW Akademie and its partners strengthen free media and media literacy worldwide through training, consulting, and networks that span the globe. The focus is often on disadvantaged groups, including members of ethnic minorities, refugees, and women. For people in remote areas, community radio stations are often their only source for reliable information.
El periodismo en sí de esta sociedad, de la ciudad, como siempre digo, no es igual al periodismo que hacemos los periodistas indígenas, porque nosotros trabajamos desde el territorio.
In DW Akademie projects around the world, young people also learn how to use media responsibly. Because only those who can use media competently and classify information correctly can help build a better future.
Social media brings us together as young people to fight for a common cause and ideals that we'd like to see change in our country.
Free media, free expression, free societies. This is what DW Akademie and its partners are working for around the world.
I am very excited to be hosting this session on artificial intelligence and the impact that it will have on my work, perhaps even yours. And I've got a great panel here who will help me answer those questions, but these are some of the things that we'll be looking at.
Outperforming human journalists. Automated reporting, fact-checking, content personalization. Generative AI may soon be leaving traditional content creators in the dust. Are journalists prepared for the era of synthetic media? Venture into From Words to Wonders? How generative AI is transforming content creation.
So are we ready for AI? This is the question that we'll be asking, and to help me answer that, I have Nilesh Christopher here. He's a South Asia correspondent for Rest of World, an online publication covering the impact of technology outside the US. I'm also joined by Ranga Yogeshwar. He is one of the leading independent science journalists right here in Germany, and I would even argue the entire world. Please help me welcome them. Ranga, you don't like that, and so I'll start with the first question, just sort of set the terms right, yeah? We talk about artificial intelligence, but what is intelligence in the context of AI?
Well, we use words which are not sharply defined, like intelligence, like creativity. So there is no scientific definition. So first of all, we should always accept that we speak of something which is not defined, and, well, artificial intelligence in a broader sense means now we have tools which, for example, can generate data. This data can be pictures, this data can be text, this data can be program code. So we have a new tool which, out of the box, can sort of speed up certain processes.
So how artificial then is it, really?
Well, it's not written by humans. If I look at the discussion, the prior discussion, if you look at social media, basically, they also used artificial intelligence, but it was human content which was curated by the machine. This now is changing in the sense that, for the first time, the machine itself is generating language. And this is very important because language is the basis of human culture. This is, the machine has hacked our system of culture, of civilization. And this naturally is interesting. I mean, you have big challenges, but you also have big risks in the sense that the machine can start creating narratives which are non-human, and nobody knows where they lead. So a big issue within the world of AI is the so-called
Yeah, we'll be assessing
alignment.
the impact just now. But Nilesh, I'm just curious, as you're covering the impact of this outside of the US, what have been your findings so far?
It's been quite varied, to be honest. The way in which content creators as a whole have adopted is, the rate at which they've done is quite different, but one of the most interesting examples that I've come across, we all know of YouTube as a platform, and independent creators, both journalistic and non-journalistic creators, have come on and have gathered a lot of following, right? And within that, there is a small microeconomy called YouTube thumbnail designers. And right now, you have tools coming up. Right now, you have tools which automatically generate thumbnail designs. So previously, a small shop out of Bangalore, 2 designers sitting in a basement would create 40 designs based on a concept for 600, 700 rupees. Now you have a $10 tool that can generate it based on the data that you give it to train it. So that's one way in which I've seen independent creators adopt tools like this. That's just the image tools. And then you have, there's another example that he's a consultant to a politician and runs a political consultancy. And every time his team has to come up with a brief ahead of, say, a political rally, and they have to run Facebook ads, they create the outline for the entire campaign using tools like ChatGPT. So independent content creators have been adopting it, and for me, it's the lack of disclosures and the way they use it. It's a little concerning, but the way in which they've adapted is just, it's all across.
Okay, I'd like to ask the audience a question. We're going to run a poll just now. I asked Nilesh just now how journalists are already using AI, and I'd like to know from you, what do you create using artificial intelligence? There's going to be a QR code, and just to use that to give us your answer, simply use your phone, and we will have the results. The question again, what do you create using artificial intelligence? Okay, so we already started looking at the impact, Ranga. And one of the major questions is the ability of AI to outperform us. And so the major question for journalists is, Are we done?
No, we're not done. First of all, if you look at the applications of AI, there is a vast field. So we have to realize this is a field not only confined to journalism. This is a field, you mentioned some examples. If you look at science, you have now, for example, artificial intelligence generating or predicting, for example, protein folding. Quite a different field. Or you have AI in the field of coding, which I think so is a good exercise, because if you use AI to code, you very soon sort of realize the strengths, but also the limitations, because this is very clear. If there is bullshit code, nothing is going to come out. So I think so we first have to get a feel of what can AI do. In some areas, it's interesting. Last week, I had a discussion in Frankfurt with Boris Eldagsen. He's a photographer, and he produced a picture which won the World Photographic Award, and this picture was AI generated. So we had a discussion, and he refused the prize. And we had a discussion with him and with Boris Eldagsen, who is one of the scientists who build up Stable Diffusion, which is one of these generative machines, open source. So you can see there is a big discussion also going on, for example, in culture. Now, if you look at journalism, I think so the most important thing is, what is our perspective? You have the well-established classical journalist who does research, who follows the rules, great. But nowadays, what we see worldwide is a decline of this sort of journalism compared to social media spreading out news. In many countries, for example, in Asia, Facebook is the #1 source of news. So that's a very different situation there, where there is no fact-checking, no control. And we now have to keep in mind that with artificial intelligence, we have a catalyst which is going to, in the next years, produce much more content than humans did.
And much cheaper.
Much cheaper. And we realized already in the world of social networks that there were these very few people generating huge amounts of, news, flooding the world and destabilizing, for example, politics. This trend is going to pick up. And the difficult question in journalism is, what is going to happen if AI intoxicates the web, in the sense that you want to do some fact-checking, you look it up on the web, and you run into another article not knowing this also was generated by AI. So in a certain way, the year 2022 is really sort of a new reset point, where from there on now, we cannot trust information in the sense of we don't know if it was AI generated. And this is not only true for present facts, but even for past facts, because AI now starts to rewrite history. Sometimes quite charming, like old films, for example, from the brothers Lumière in Paris, black and white, and AI is able to interpolate, to color them, so you get a different sense of, what the world was looking like over 100 years ago. But naturally, you can create fictive persons. You can sort of literally change history, and who is going to be able to fact-check, is this true or not?
Yeah, and this actually ties to something that you had mentioned earlier, the question of transparency and the ethics around it. Already there's a loss of trust in journalism, and now you add deepfakes, AI-generated imagery. How do we circumnavigate this world?
All right, if I can build on what Ranga just added. One of the interesting examples that have come out of it is there has been a lot of ink spilt.
Please hold your microphone up.
There's been a lot of ink spilt on the impact of disinformation. AI would exacerbate, and the bad actors would use this to develop, more deep fakes and the distribution of it. I have a counter argument to this, which is to say, yes, these tools are widely available, but the bad actors do not right now get the distribution through Twitter and other social media platforms. I would try to focus a little bit specifically about when it comes to disinformation. We tend to focus too much about doomsday scenarios. The way I see these platforms respond to it is where there is a lack of it. In terms of tools available to journalists, I call it the detection equity gap. When you have tools to detect if a certain image is fake or not, I think that is more important. If we could focus more on ensuring that these tools reach a larger audience, especially in the global south, that is what is more important as we move forward.
Ranga is not having it, he's shaking his head.
Yes, no, I don't believe in that, because this is a very US-American narrative of saying we can fight disinformation with AI. And this is not true. First of all, we are going to run into an arms race, so you generate AI news or fake news. You have a filter based on AI, and then you sort of generate a new AI which is able to bypass. So this doesn't lead somewhere. Yeah. What we see are two aspects. Number one, for many years, at least in some parts of this world, we took news, we took journalism as something which was essential for our society. It is still essential for our society. But we allowed that journalism sort of turned into an attention economy which had a very high price, even before AI. I mean, look at, we mentioned Twitter before. Sin and Ralph from MIT did a study on Twitter and found out that false news spreads 5 times faster than true stories. I would not accuse even the network platforms, because their intention is not innate to spread false news. But we all see there are things happening which are unexpected. And this is going to take over with AI. And I think so at some point we see disruptive technology, and I think so we need slowly disruptive politics as an answer. So we have seen times where Cambridge Analytica and Facebook showed us very clearly this is not good, this is toxic in some countries. And I think so these are the moments where a society has to ground such a social network for some time and say, okay, if you bring it right, you can fly like in the aircraft industry, but if you crash our society, we will not allow you to fly, full stop.
I partially agree. Can I give a real-life example to it? So this happened quite recently. There is an organization by name Witness. They specifically look at detecting deep fakes that come out and cause real-life harm. And I'll give you 2 examples, one that I'm working on and one that happened. In South Sudan, the RSF militia put out a video of their leader making a speech. And effectively, everybody assumed it was AI generated because everybody believed this leader was not alive. However, on inspection, there was a journalist who did not have the tools himself, who contacted Witness, and they sent it to 2 independent organizations. One is a person who is well versed with how these deepfakes are created. He evaluated it, and then there was a machine system. There was a deepfake detection system that ran the test, and both of them returned saying that this seems like it's real. So to me, AI is liar's dividend, where politicians could easily say when something it's fake, when it's not, is a bigger problem, and getting these deepfake detection tools to more journalists and fact checkers, and actually ensuring that these fact checkers are trained is more important. The second example, it's hopefully at the end of this week, the story would be out. It was a politician in southern India who had 2 embarrassing audio clips of his that was released online. We picked it up. The pushback was basically he was accusing his own political party of grift. And of course, as soon as the audio came out, he said, no, this is not true. There are advanced detection tools that have come, and he even put out a video of AI Drake singing, saying, look at this, how cool this is how they can create it. The process of evaluating this as soon as this was out, from day one, it took me 4 weeks to reach out to Witness, and then they had to find out practitioners do 3 independent evaluations of the audios and get back saying like, hey, the second audio clip is true, the first audio clip seemed like altered. So if this is the lag time we have to detect a video or an audio that comes out, I think the immediate solution here is to identify a list of detection tools that would help journalists and get it to as many journalists in the global south.
So is this a strategy then that we should be employing as journalists to sort of effectively utilize these tools to counter fake news then? Ranga.
Well, although I love technology, I don't believe in this tool making, because at the end, journalism has to do with trust. Journalism has to do with real fact-checking, and this is costly. This takes a lot of effort, as we all know, and what we see is that in this very disruptive world, the basis of journalism, the commercial basis, has just boiled down. So we can see everywhere in the world that there is less money for good research, less money for fact-checking, and so on. So I don't believe in this sort of technological approach. I think so at some point, we as a society must realize that with all the fantastic opportunities we have in AI, we have to look at media as something really special. Media is not shoe polish. With shoe polish, you can do a great business model, but media is something like the nervous system of a society. And what we see in the last years is we've been intoxicating this nervous system. We have many, many big problems, and we didn't put it right. So, I mean, you followed the congressional hearings in the US. All the big tech platforms claim we are tech companies, although by now, I think so, we have to think of what they are doing, who is really responsible. Naturally, also, the big platforms have gorgeous aspects. I mean, I love video tutorials on YouTube, so there is really a lot. But on the other side, you have this danger of destabilizing a society, and I think so, looking at the application of AI, we really have to raise the flag and say, okay, media is the nervous system of a society, and we don't want to be on drugs.
Nilesh, you had something to add?
I'm with Ranga, 100%.
Okay. No, go ahead.
The point I would like to add is the way in which it's evolving, it's hard to... one of the ways that we are pressurized in the discourse around AI in publishing and other spheres actually got OpenAI and all these companies to slow down, take stock in GPT-4. They could have the pace at which they shipped from GPT-1 to GPT-4 was phenomenal. Now they've slowed down. So this conversation is important. Journalists will remain at the center of it. We cannot be replaced. We can't. Number one is context and the knowledge we have. I was talking to a journalist from South Korea who lives in the US, and she basically said, when I used the system and asked, hey, tell me about North Korea, the system answered from a US perspective. But there are multiple contexts.
And let me jump in here. Are there any inherent biases that AI has which could bring us problems when it comes to fair and balanced reporting?
I believe, let's start with the context of the answers that they put out. I believe OpenAI and other systems creators have acknowledged the problem for bias. They talk about data sets, they even warn themselves, but still there is a lot of BS that comes out of these systems. And as journalists using it, even as an iterative partner, I mean, that's what everybody says, using computers as an iterative partner is going to be the next phase. While using it, you need to have your BS detector on.
Okay, I want to open the floor to some questions, but before that, we have a question from online. How can news organizations find a balance between utilizing AI for efficiency while preserving the critical thinking of storytelling abilities of human journalists? Nilesh?
I think it's one of the most fascinating things when a solution to problems like this comes from places that's unexpected. I'll go to Sri Lanka. There is an organization called Watchdog, which basically is an open source research entity. They're a group of 5 to 6 open source researchers. When there was a pushback from the politicians, and then when there was a lot of political pressures happening last year, these guys were able to report on not just the political context, the economic collapse as well in a data-driven fashion. They're not a large organization. However, they've been able to publish long-form reported pieces. They took all of that, fed it in an open source LLM system, and now they have a chat interface where you can go and ask, okay, what has happened to Sri Lanka since Rajapaksa took over, or what has the IMF said about it? And these are not, currently as the system goes, these are not answers crawled from the open web, rather a specific set of articles that they fed into the system plus Wikipedia. I think we'll start to see more and more small news organizations punch above their weight by leveraging these tools, Watchdog being an example. And that's the future that I would like to see, where smaller organizations use the limited resources, leverage AI, and be able to do more.
Be a good teacher to AI, essentially. All right, some questions?
May I just add one aspect, because it was human journalists. And I think so, in this question, there is one clear statement: journalism first. And naturally, we have tools, we can use them, but journalism first. And in some degrees, because we are going to be confronted with synthetic journalism, not human journalism, my hope is a bit that something similar happens than what happened to the food industry in Germany. In the 1970s, the chemistry industry was fantastic, and you could have a pudding, you know, totally artificial flavor, artificial color, and so on. And you could choose. And people slowly realized, oh, this is food. And now we are sort of stepping back and saying, no, we want to know exactly from where this tomato is. It has to be real, and so on. And I can imagine that using tools, yes, but to some degree that people step back and say, okay, whom do I trust at the end? And I trust humans in a context where I know they are trustworthy.
Okay,
I think so this is the biggest challenge we have in the next year.
Very quickly, yes or no, do you then think that journalists should be disclosing how much of their work has been synthetically generated?
Well, we have to disclose, first of all, content. Last week there was a magazine.
I said a quick yes or no. I said a quick yes or no answer. We've got to take a question.
Please tag synthetic information, pictures, text, etc., and make it obvious, not in the too small lines so that people like myself can't read it. No, it has to be really clear.
Okay, we've got time for just one question. I had already identified the lady there.
Hi, good morning. My name is Carolina Medina from Colombia. My question is for Yogeshwar. I hope I'm pronouncing well.
Sí.
You are telling that AI really is a threat for our society, but the question is, our society is actually good? And also, do you think it's possible to stop artificial intelligence, which is better, say, machine learning? Because I don't think intelligence is I think intelligence is mostly a human characteristic instead of a machine. So basically, I would like to know do you think it is actually possible to stop? Because I don't think it's not possible, and I think it's more a thing about creating fair and just databases instead of just saying, just stop this, because it's not going to stop. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much for the question. Number one, I'm more afraid of stupid people than of artificial intelligence. Number two, you just mentioned you are from Colombia. You might recall that Amnesty International did a campaign on police in Colombia with a generated picture, and they got truthfully bashed for that. If you looked at the picture, you could even see that the colors of the Colombian flag were wrong, so there was some sort of a still fact-checking possible. What I believe is, yes, use technology, but journalism first. Know that this is too important. I mean, this is, if you code and you use AI, you realize, okay, the program doesn't work, so that's very easy, you know? There is the inherent fact-checking in the sense that the program doesn't run, the code doesn't work. But in journalism, this is very different. So I think we need to have journalists first, and this is difficult because we have to really, in a very open way, think of how can we finance that. We have seen in the past huge profits in social media and so on. And I think we have to perhaps come to a regulation where they have to pay, you know, I sound like Trump, you know, they have to pay for, good journalism. And I think this is crucial in the next years, because if we don't have it, just imagine a society where you do not have credible news. We have never lived through that in the past in a sort of global way, where you don't know, can you trust this, where you don't know what is the intention, and so on. This is going to be a society where I think collapse is programmed. I mean, how can economy work on the basis of, news and nobody knows,
right,
is this true or not? So it's not only altruistic, it's very economic.
With real life consequences, obviously. That's all the time we have. The director in my ear is saying, that's it. Earlier, I had asked a question, what do you create using AI? The results are in. 154 of you said you use it for translations. That was most of you. Followed by 131 of you who say texts. And then we have visuals by 63 of you, and we've got statistics and other at 34 and 36. And surprise, surprise, 28 of you say they do not use AI. Thank you for participating. And thank you to Nilesh and Ranga for our very brief but very interesting talk.